This morning we've got 3 people, and I won't overload you with introducing all of them at once. So we are opening with LyndaFolan. Dr. LyndaFolan is a leading expert in organisational psychology and cultural transformation, and is a renowned specialist in leadership development. Lynda has a highly successful track record of strategically leading international organisational development teams and delivering successful cultural change in global organisations. She is the Managing Director of Inspired Development Solutions. This niche consultancy provides leading edge and bespoke solutions for organisations across the globe, helping them to transform and thrive. Lynda is also the acclaimed author of Leader Resilience, The New Frontier of Leadership, a highly sought after book that challenges how businesses think about leadership. This morning, Lynda is speaking to us about flourishing and delivering excellence in a VUCA world. Please welcome LyndaFolan.
Here's my cheer group, yeah. I've already had hugs, so I'm feeling very welcomed. So thank you for that introduction. And the topic that I've picked has already been tackled in certain guises over the last 24 hours, but I'm going to take you much broader as you think about your resilience and the ability to flourish in today's world. So I'm going to say to you that you need to be as disciplined about your resilience as you are about anything else in your life. Because if you want to be up on stage, if you want to be able to continue to deliver what you want to deliver in a business context, you have to be able to look after yourself. We heard those messages, as I say, dotted through yesterday. We've heard them today as well. If you're not looking after yourself, you're really damaging your ability to deliver in today's world. Now, the researchers have been telling us probably for about 15 to 20 years that we are living in really different times. They've described it as the VUCA world. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous, yeah? They've been saying that for 15 years. We just ignored that, yeah? We went, oh, don't worry, the world's going to keep doing what it's always done. It's going to keep being how it always was. Don't worry about it, it'll go away. And then COVID hit. And we all went, oh, it's changed. And we all got hysterical, but actually the world had been systemically changing anyway. So if you look at what had been happening and what is happening, if you just look at what Tim was showing, the difference when he did his first story to now in terms of airline travel. Think about that difference, how it's changed. Think about how our lives have changed. Do you know that Apple only actually brought out an iPad in 2007. That's actually not that long ago. I remember, I'm showing my age now, I remember when I got my first BlackBerry. Do you remember those? No admission from any of the younger generation, but I remember getting it and being super excited about it and going, oh my gosh, this is transformative. Before that, I'd been sent on a business trip to Russia, and they'd given me a phone that fitted in a suitcase that was this size. And I had to carry it so that my CEO could keep in touch with me while I was in Russia as a woman traveling in Russia on my own in those days. I'm showing my age. But reality is that things have changed and evolved. We can't look back and go, actually, it's the same as it was back then. Reality is that the speed of change has gone upwards. So again, if you think back to some of the early writers in organizational psychology, Charles Handy is one of the experts in the field. He said that we need to be evolving and changing. We need to be evolving and changing our businesses. We need to be evolving and changing ourselves. If you listen to Tim, You've got to stay ahead of the curve. If you're not staying ahead of the curve, how on earth are you going to stay relevant to your audiences? How on earth are you going to stay relevant to what's happening today? Charles Handy says every organization, every person, every team has a starting point. You rise to success. If you don't keep up transformation, you're going to end up irrelevant. Yeah. We can all think of sports teams that have risen to success and then descended. We can all think of speakers probably who've risen to success and descended. If you don't stay ahead of that curve, you are going to get behind. Now, what Charles says is that you need to find the point A when you are starting to transform yourself. Don't wait until you've gone over the curve, until you've lost your edge. Stay ahead of it, because if you go over the edge, you're going to end up in decline, and then it's much harder. But when I first started in psychology, we reckoned you had 5 years to do that, yeah? From point A to your next point A. What do you reckon it is now? 6 to 12 months, yeah? You've got 6 to 12 months, so you cannot be waiting around hoping like hell that what you've got is relevant in today's world. You've got to be constantly evolving and changing. I remember when I just finished my PhD. Now, understand that I did my PhD while I was running my own business, going through a messy divorce, raising a 13-year-old teenager who I think he admits was fairly challenging. So I'm writing a PhD. It's taken me 8 years to do it. I'm exhausted. I don't ever want to see a professor ever in my life again. I don't want to ever see red marks through a piece of paper again. And my mentor at the time, who happens to live in London, because I spent a long time in London, we're on a call, on a Zoom call, on a mentoring catch-up, and he goes, "Oh, Linda, why don't you convert your PhD into a book?" I think I told him to F off at least 10 times on that call. But a year later, COVID hit and I wrote the book. So when you think about transitioning your life, your experiences, the businesses that you work in, the people that you work with, you cannot stand still. Even if you've done a big piece of work. 8 years of study was way more than enough for me. I'm not a natural academic. And to be asked to think about even doing a book out of that was just ridiculous. But we've got to be transforming ourselves. We've got to stay ahead of that curve. Now, whether you like it or not, that VUCA world that I've just talked about puts you under some level of pressure, yeah? However, it's your choice whether you choose that pressure to end up as stress. Who's felt like that a couple of times in the last month, yeah? Come on, be honest. Reality is that we are under an immense amount of pressure. The VUCA world is putting us under pressure. If we're not sleeping, it puts us under even more pressure, yeah? Reality is that VUCA world is going to keep challenging you. It's not going to slow down. It's not going to get any better. Also, the risk factors of it ending up as mental health are very high. Our younger generation coming through, the stats are scary. So our younger generation have been diagnosed, before they even come into the workforce, they've been diagnosed, 35% of them have been diagnosed with either neurodivergence or mental health. So reality is that this VUCA world is pressurizing even our youngest people who we think should be resilient. They should be able to bounce back. But actually they bounced back the worst from COVID. They had the most repercussions. So when we talk about looking after our resilience, this is not a, maybe I'll get to this someday. It's actually do it now. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait till next week when it's a good week. Don't put off what you can do today, because if you don't, you end up with your performance deteriorating. And then you've got a whole lot of other pressures. Then, you know, your job gets harder, everything gets harder to deliver and do. So Jax has done this research repeatedly, and he shows that your performance doesn't just gently roll off, it actually drops off a cliff face. So reality is that if whatever job you do, if you are not looking after your resilience, you run the risk of ending up in high stress and your performance is going to go south. If it goes south, then you've got, as I said, a whole lot of more additional problems that you've got to deal with. When we talk about being in the flow, we heard that from a couple of the speakers yesterday. That's that central piece. Are you able to keep yourself in the flow, energized and motivated and excited about what's coming next? Or are you just, I can't get up in the morning? Yeah? Because if you're there, you've got a problem. But it's not too late to pull yourself back from that, but it's much easier if you pull yourself back earlier. And so that's where, when we start to talk about resilience, stop making excuses. Stop hoping that the world around you is going to get easier or simpler or slower or easier to handle, and start actually looking after your well-being and your resilience. I'm spending a lot of time talking to organizations, to people, to individuals, to groups about resilience. Why? Because it's hitting us globally. I'm over in London with 7 or 8 conferences, I think it's 8 now, 8 conferences in April just talking about resilience, yeah? This is the topic of today because we are seeing so many people fall over. Do the math around your table, okay? This is a statistic. 1 in every 3 of you is on some sort of medication to cope. Okay? And that's only the legal stuff, not the illegal stuff. Or the coffee or the whatever you use to keep you going, yeah? So we can't just keep ignoring this. We have to start taking cognizance of it. And we have to start understanding that resilience is going to support us. And all the speakers yesterday talked about aspects of resilience. Sleep is one of them. If you're not sleeping, quite frankly, forget it. Your resilience is 0. And it doesn't matter what age you are. If your sleep is deteriorating, your ability to remain resilient is deteriorating. So what do we mean by talking about resilience? And I obviously part of my PhD was looking at resilience. So we've put a very definitive statement around what resilience is. Why? Because it's often misconstrued. However, I have tweaked it based on yesterday. We heard that it's not the ability to bounce back, it's the ability to bounce forward. So I like that. And I think, as it's my statement anyway, I can change it how I like. Even though it's in my PhD, but I reckon I can change it how I like. So it is the capacity to bounce forward or bounce back, however you want to describe it, from adversity, challenge and change. But coupled with that, you've got to look after yourself. And you've got to look after yourself in all aspects. It's no good just looking after your physical health. You've got to look after your mental health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, the whole ambit. So when I say that I'm going to go broader, that's where I'm going broader. It's no good looking after one aspect. We see lots of top athletes who are incredibly fit. Then they have an accident and they can't do their fitness regime and they fall apart. Yeah? You've got to have balance across all of these aspects, because if you don't, this world will nail you. It will keep pressurizing you. We have to look after ourselves on every aspect. Now, I learned this very hard while I was doing my PhD. I've got to say, it was one of the hardest periods of my life. I was studying sometimes till 1 a.m. in the morning, then getting up and delivering workshops during the day. and having to be focused, but also taking my teenage son through teenage years. That puts a different level of pressure onto all of that. Those of you who've been through the teenage years will know what I mean. Reality is, though, it doesn't matter what the pressure is. It doesn't matter what the pressure you're dealing with. Each of us has our own unique sets of pressures. What are you doing about looking after yourself? Yeah. What are you doing about taking care of your resilience? Have you got this under control? Now, one of the things that we did, and this is the joy of being able to do research, is one of the things that we did is we came up with a definition of resilience. It's the first ever based on an organizational setting. And we've defined what the determinants of resilience are, and we've measured them and tested them. So, what I'd like you to do first, before I show you that model, I want you to, what's the first word that comes to your mind when I use the term well-being or resilience? Go on, shout out. Sorry? Energy, yep, tons of it. Balance, yep. Sustainability, I can keep going no matter what the pressure level, no matter what my working hours, yep.
Peace.
Calm, peace. Nurture, work-life balance, sleep, happiness, harmony, self-care. So, yep. So all of those come to mind. It's not hard to come up with adjectives that go with resilience and well-being, and yet we've never actually defined what resilience looks like and what we need to work on. Now, the outcomes of resilience are phenomenal. There's a ton of research showing you that if you look after your resilience, all of those things are possible. Isn't that fantastic? That's worth bidding for, yeah? You get better results at work, you get better results at home, you live longer, you live more healthily. And there's a couple of neuroscientists that I follow, Dr. Andrew Huberman particularly, whose work is just phenomenal. He's one of the top neuroscientists at Harvard. He is really starting to show that you can change the trajectory of your health over your lifetime. So instead of the traditional trajectory, which is downhill as you get older, you can go better health and well-being. So reality is that you can get younger, is what I'm telling you. Your health can get younger. So your actual physical health, if you look after your resilience, you can get really great results. So what is this model of resilience that you're talking about, Linda? Well, this is it. It's really simple. There are three key things. If you work on these consistently, your resilience will go up, okay? Now, each of them they're intercorrelated, so I will touch on each of them and give you an indication on what we mean by each of them. And yes, they're techie psychological terms, but don't worry about that. I'm into simplicity. I will explain them very simply. So the first one is locus of control. It's a very highly researched area in psychology. There's about 4 million pieces of research around it, so highly researched, very well validated. But basically, all that says is stop being a victim. Yeah? Stop being a victim and start owning what you've got, take responsibility for where you're at, and go forward from there. The minute we go into victim mode, we've lost our resilience. If you think back to COVID, yeah? What happened when people went into victim mode? Do you remember the punch-ups for toilet rolls? I was like, seriously? I had to really play those a couple of times to see they weren't fake, yeah? That's victim mode. That's pure and utter victim mode. If you're in victim mode, you cannot be resilient. If it's my boss, if it's someone else, I haven't got a shot on the stage because someone else is better than me, well, what are you doing about it? Basically, locus of control says take back control. Take back the reins of your own life. The second aspect of resilience that if we build it consistently will deliver great results is what we've described as self-concept well-being. Now, understand that psychologists are a bit parochial. So when I put my PhD research up, I had to put it up to all the psychologists, yeah? So the clin psychs, the educational psychs, the org psychs, everyone, yeah? So I had a panel of 48 people interested in my research, because every psychologist thinks they know about organizational psychology. I originally had emotional intelligence in that box. But the educational psychs and the clin psychs don't like that term. So when we talk about self-concept well-being, in simple terms, we need to build our emotional intelligence, and we need to fundamentally understand who we are. If you don't understand who you are, you can't do what Tim does. If you don't understand who you are, you can't do what you do. If you don't have good emotional intelligence, you're just going to piss people off, yeah? You're just going to get in the way of your own outcomes. You're going to stop yourself. You're going to get reactionary. When you see someone like Tim and you go on stage after him, you're going to go, oh, I'm not good enough, yeah? That's rubbish. You're good enough to be you, so be you. Emotional intelligence is key in terms of resilience. The third aspect, and probably the newest area of research, certainly the research around this is super new. Seymour Epstein, who's one of the major researchers, only published his first book in 2014. So when we talk research terms, that's super new. Constructive thinking. Simply, you need to take control over this. This is amazing, but when you're running rubbish in your heads, it's destroying you. It's destroying your resilience, and it's corrupting your ability to change the world around you. We heard from lots of speakers talk about that yesterday. This is fundamental. Now, in the past, back when I was talking about you had 5 years, back in those days, the reality is that we believed you couldn't control your mind. Yeah? We kind of accepted that your mind just ran and it did what it did. And ladies, we're particularly bad at this. We run crap in our heads all the time. A lot of it undermining to ourselves as human beings. But we assumed that you couldn't control that. We now know from the research around neuroplasticity that your brain is incredibly pliable. You can change your brain in an instant. Okay? This is transformative stuff. When I work one-on-one with people, this is the place that really brings about change. This is the place. If you change your mind, you change everything. If you can change your thinking, you can change everything. And I don't just mean rose-colored glasses. You know, we heard from rose-colored glasses. I don't mean putting on rose-colored glasses. I mean actually shifting your mindset, actually changing the way you think, transforming the way you perceive things, transforming the way you react to things. Those are the key things that will help you to build your capacity to be resilient. Now, let me talk a little bit more about each of these with some strategies, okay? Reality is that the first one, locus of control, you have to be able to put a gap between what you're experiencing and the reactions that you have, yeah? You've got to be able to put that gap in every day, in every second, yeah? When someone cuts in front of you, if you don't put a gap in, you're going to get grumpy, yeah? Then you're going to get wherever you're going in a grumpy mood. Every day we're called to put that gap in and to really understand. And if we can do that, then we can stay in this internally locused position. If I put you under pressure then, and you're internally locused, suddenly you're able to respond to the world differently. You're looking for the positives rather than the negatives. You're finding the opportunities rather than the things that have gone wrong. So suddenly we get a really different feel. If you think back to COVID again, that 100-year-old gentleman in the UK who walked around his garden and raised £12 million for the NHS. That's incredible. Who would think that a 100-year-old man could raise 12 million pounds? And yet on the other side, we saw the external locus of control with people punching each other's for a toilet roll. Yeah? You want to stay on this end. Now, I will be honest, we all go down there. Okay? We all go, woe is me, it's just not good today. Yeah? We all do that. Your job, though, is to keep pulling yourself back here. Keep pulling yourself over to that internally locus position, and then you will stay resilient. Now, there are a ton of strategies, and in my book, you'll find a hell of a lot more strategies. And there's a whole chapter just dedicated to strategies on each of these in the book. But these are some strategies that will help you. I think fundamentally, you've got to find the strategies that work for you. I can't tell you mine because mine will be different to yours. But your job is to find the strategies that work for you, to keep you in that internally locus position rather than stepping into that externally locus position. Really, really important that we find those strategies. So let's talk about the second aspect, which is our emotional intelligence in broad terms, self-concept well-being being the techie version. So let's talk about, oops, flicked a little bit too fast. So we need to know ourselves and we need good emotional intelligence. Now, reality is that if you can really understand yourself, you've actually achieved the greatest wisdom ever. I think we are incredibly complex human beings, but our ability to actually deeply understand ourselves is fundamental to this aspect. Your emotional intelligence is the second aspect. Now, emotional intelligence is being described in lots of ways, but if you look at Daniel Goleman's model, it's the simplest. Starts with self-awareness. Got to be aware of my own emotions, my own reactions. Then I've got to be able to self-manage those. So if you get up grumpy, what did Tim tell us? You got to pick yourself up and present, yeah? You can't go, oh, I'm not feeling good today, I'm just going to sit at home and grump. That's not going to help you. So when we talk about emotional intelligence, this is not a soft skill. Let me just disavow you. This is the hardest skill that you'll ever learn. I'm trying desperately to get UWA to teach our engineers emotional intelligence before they come out of university. Why would they not? But they won't. They won't have a bar of it. Exactly. But then I get them in work. So I go to the mine sites a fair amount. I was sent up to a mine site just recently, and the leadership tried to tell me they'd fix the female issues on the mine site by changing the locks and putting double locks on the women's doors. Emotional intelligence. Hilarious. But reality is that emotional intelligence is a really hard skill to learn. It's not easy, and it gets tested all the time. But if you want to be resilient, you have to have it. Now, again, there's a whole lot of strategies up on the screen. Feel free to have a look at those. There are a whole lot more in my book, Leader Resilience, but please feel free to have a look at those. You need to find your set of strategies. Trust me, I've honed mine over a lot of years. I'm really disciplined about my cleanup process. I describe it as my hoovering, yeah? You don't hoover your house once a year, so don't hoover your emotional intelligence once a year. Hoover it every day if you need to, because you are carrying a lot of stuff with you. The last aspect of resilience that I want to really just hone in on is the constructive thinking. Now, constructive thinking is the ability to actually understand how your brain works. Now, Seymour Epstein says that if you can learn how to construct your experiences in a constructive way rather than a destructive way, you'll have less negative emotions, unnecessary negative emotions, yeah? Now, I'm going to spend a bit of time just describing what that looks like, but understand that you chatter to yourselves a lot, okay? You are chattering to yourself 24/7. The researchers say you have 60 to 200 thoughts per minute. Don't ask me how they calculate that, but that's what they reckon, yeah? When you are doing that thinking, you are getting in the way of your resilience. And how it works is this. Everything comes into your brain via your senses. You pass that through your thalamus, which is a tiny little receptor organ in the front of your brain. You then pass all of that data straight into your cerebral cortex. Now, in your cerebral cortex is everything that's you, okay? So you are sifting everything you experience through you. And you are then only going to choose an amygdala response or an emotional response once you've done that. So if in your cerebral cortex you can sift that healthily, you're going to be much more resilient. Yeah? Our ability to clean up our cerebral cortex is key. And I do understand that our timing has evaporated, so I'm going to quickly just jump ahead to some strategies to wrap up. Strategies around mental processing are really important. The two top ones from psychologists, neuroscientists, from every area are journaling and some sort of meditative practice. If you don't have those two things in play, you're getting into trouble. And I'm going to wrap up there and hand over to our next speakers. But please join me on LinkedIn. Come and talk about resilience. I spend a lot of time in organizations, helping organizations and individuals to build resilience. And it's a really exciting area, very, very dominant in the marketplace at the moment. Your well-being matters. Let me leave you with one message. If you do nothing from today and from tomorrow, take away the message that you need to look after yourself. Thank you.